before the storm. Hello, everyone. I'm Peter Maravellis, the events director here at City Lights. Welcome to you all, and welcome to all of you online. This is the first event of the season. I'm happy to say we're back after the holidays. This has been an amazing year for City Lights to kind of rebound from the pandemic, and we're back into doing live events again. I think we're almost at like 1/3 to 2/3 virtual, so you can still see a lot of stuff online. So check out our website and our calendar. There's a lot coming up between now and May. So tonight's event is being co-sponsored by the American Historical Association, which is in town, we're happy to say. And so welcome to those of you who are in the room and those of you maybe watching from your hotel. Before we begin, as is customary before each event, I would like to remind everyone that, especially those of you online, we are beaming to you from the unceded ancestral homelands of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. I'd like to take a moment to offer our respects to those who have come before us as stewards of the land. So Marlene Daut's new book is just a wonderful, wonderful tome. And I think Awakening the Ashes, an intellectual history of the Haitian Revolution, it's the kind of book that we love here at City Lights because it also looks at kind of this alternate history. It's an intellectual history. You're thinking about like the way that ideas affect events. And we absolutely love it. And kudos to University of North Carolina Press for recognizing a good thing when they see it. So not only is this book really a valuable addition, I think, to history of Haiti, but also just to the many interesting characters, revolutionaries, intellectuals that kind of like were really a big part of that movement. So Marlene Daut is professor of French and African American Studies at Yale University. She has published numerous works. These include Baron de Vasty and the Origins of Black Atlantic Humanism and Tropics of Haiti. She's also the co-editor of the volume Haitian Revolutionary Fictions and is series editor for New World Studies at University of Virginia Press and section co-editor for the Global Black History series at Public Books. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, The Nation, Essence Magazine, Harper's Bazaar, Public Books, amongst others. So she's going to be joined tonight by Julia Gaffield. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay, good. She's an historian, a writer, an associate professor of history at the College of William and Mary. She's the author of Haitian Connections in the Atlantic World, Recognition After Revolution, published by the University of North Carolina Press also. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, the Globe and the Mail, the Times, and she's been interviewed on BBC World Service, PRI's The World, and many others. So I want to remind those of you online, we are posting links with which you may purchase books. For those of you here, of course, you may get a signed copy. Actually, even those of you online may get a signed copy tonight. So please, use the link, buy the book. Thank you both for joining us, and thank you in the audience and online too. Welcome to City Lights, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I know this is a bustling city with many things to do, and we are just absolutely delighted to have this space to be able to hold this conversation during the week of Haitian independence. January 1st, Haitian Independence Day, and January 2nd, Ancestors Day. So to be the first event is really kind of, it's an honor for us. And I also want to say, give a shout out to UNC Press, to my editors, Elaine Masner and Debbie Gershenowitz, without whom a book like this can't really come to fruition because it is something that seems niche. But as I try to make the point in the book, the Haitian Revolution is for everyone. It's a story that affected everyone, and it's a story I hope everyone comes to know. And writing the book, I wanted to foreground the Haitian revolutionary authors and thinkers who made the Haitian Revolution happen, but then explained it to the world afterward. And so that's largely what this book is about. So the structure tonight is that I'm going to do a little bit of a reading, and then Julia is going to ask me some questions, and then some new questions she said she's just come up with also. She told me some of them, but now she said she has some few new ones. So I'm going to prepare for those and try to think on my feet. And then at the end of our dialogue, I'll read a little bit from the epilogue, and then we'll open it up to questions from you and from the people online, who I hope will be nice. People online, be nice. Sometimes online people. So this is from the prologue of the book. In 1814, in the city of Cap Henri, and King Henri Christophe's most prolific secretary, Baron de Vathey, published a striking testimonial against slavery, Le Système colonial dévoilé, or the colonial system unveiled. Vathey's goal in publishing this book, he said, was to unveil the heinous crimes of the French colonists. His stated methodology was consulting the dead to share their stories from the grave. Vathey declared that bringing to light these damning testimonies against enslavers required him to awaken the ashes of the numerous victims whom the colonists precipitated into the tomb and to borrow their voices. By awakening these ashes, Vathey offered to tell the history of colonial slavery and its many brutalities from a Haitian perspective, using a strategy today's historians might recognize as history from below. Decades before Gilles Michelet popularized this method, one of Haiti's first professional historians established the tradition of talking to and or for the dead to correct previous historical obfuscations. In Vathey's writing, awakening the ashes is not just a metaphor. Some of the testimony came from below the ground. Death was not an obstacle to accessing the experience of the deceased, hence the ashes that Vathey summoned and the graves he unearthed. Vathey also had living witnesses. He not only interviewed the still alive victims of slavery, but he said he interpolated their mutilated limbs and scars as remnants of the tortures they experienced. His goal was to produce a history of the enslaved population of colonial Saint-Domingue from their own perspective, a novel method in the Atlantic world. In a later publication, evoking once more what he called the innumerable crimes of the ex-colonists, Vathey insisted that he was publicizing the horrors of slavery for political ends, not for personal aggrandizement. Shall I again exhume the corpses of my unfortunate compatriots whom they buried alive to interrogate their souls and terrify humankind with the horrible account of the crimes of these monsters, he asked. Vathey imagined disturbing the peace of the dead solely to preserve the freedom of the living when he insisted that French crimes against the Black people they enslaved on Saint-Domingue formed a key part of Haiti's moral, legal, and spiritual claim to liberty and independence. If injustice, bad faith, cruelties of all kinds give rights to those who have experienced them over those who have perpetrated them, what people have ever had more right to independence than the Haitian people, he asked. In 1816, Vathey expressed the principles of restitution, reparation, and compensation that form the backbone of modern claims for restorative justice after mass atrocities. To pursue the claim that Haitian independence was the humane and rightful legal outcome of overthrowing the slave regime instituted and perpetuated by France, the French first needed to be found guilty, even if the only jurist in the court was public opinion. Public opinion, that queen who rules over the civilized world, who calls kings and peoples to her tribunal, who dictates to them her impartial and irrevocable decrees, who extends her invisible empire over the whole universe, who submits to her judgment both the oppressed and the oppressor, who breathes into the trumpet of fame to publish good or bad deeds, who raises up or brings down, who dispenses glory or stigma. It is to the power of public opinion that we appeal on earth as in heaven, when we will be heard and judged by the Almighty, Vathey wrote. For Vathey, condemnation by a public could precede the final day of judgment by a God, and the international community could hand down punishments every bit as severe as any court of law. A human rights trial of this nature required evidence and testimony from survivors as equally as from the relatives and descendants of those treacherously killed by the French colonists and the French army. Averring that with this line of inquiry, he was pursuing the defense of humanity as a whole, Vathey concluded with this insistence: whites, yellows, and blacks, we are all brothers, all children of the eternal Father, all interested in this cause, O humankind, whatever the color of your skin, whatever your nation, and whatever religion you profess, you are interested in the triumph of the Haitians. The insistence that slavery and colonialism, revolution and sovereignty be meticulously documented by Haitians and therefore discussed and not silenced stretches back to the earliest days of independence. Everything here calls forth the memory of the cruelties of that barbaric people. Our laws, our moors, our cities, everything still carries the imprint of the French, reads Dessalines' January 1804 speech, which accompanied his presentation of Haiti's Declaration of Independence. What am I saying? There are still Frenchmen on this island, and you believe yourselves to be free of this republic that has made war against every nation, he continued. After reminding his audience of all they lost in their 13-year struggle for freedom, your wives, your husbands, your brothers, your sisters, what am I saying, your children, your suckling babies, Dessalines asked. What are you waiting for to appease their souls? Will you descend down into the tomb without having avenged them? Obtaining vengeance was both material and discursive. In the final words of his memoir, Dessalines' secretary, Louis-Félix Boisrontonnerre, explained the lesson Haitians and the still enslaved peoples of the Americas needed to draw from reading the history of the Haitian Revolution. Haitians, he called out, whom the bravery of a true hero has lifted out of the anathema of prejudice. In reading this writing, you will be able to see with your own eyes the abyss from which Dessalines has rescued you. And you, slaves of all countries, you will learn from this great man that every person naturally carries liberty in his heart, and the keys to that liberty are in his own hands. Inspired by the visionary desire of early Haitian writers to revive the souls of their dead compatriots, to tell the Haitian side of the story of Atlantic slavery and the revolution that heralded its end, the goal of Awakening the Ashes is both to emphasize the methodological innovations found in 18th and 19th century Haitian thought and to demonstrate the centrality of Haitian revolutionary thought within broader global intellectual currents. 18th and 19th century Haitian revolutionaries, politicians, and other intellectuals both documented and theorized the Haitian Revolution and Haitian independence. I am interested in how Haitians who told the story of the revolution and independence as it unfolded and in its immediate aftermath influenced the development of anti-colonial, anti-slavery, and anti-racist approaches to historical writing, as equally as state governance. Awakening the Ashes documents the emergence of Haitian historiography and the various philosophies of history and politics articulated through it. Starting with Haitian independence in 1804, Haitian writers sought to craft a national historical narrative that would be written by them rather than by white Europeans. They led the way in exploring enduring questions about historical bias, particularly those having to do with race and nationality, through their attempts to justify and defend the existence of Haiti within a world of slavery and colonialism. Conversations about point of view continue to be at the heart of historical methodology today. Questions about race and perspective in historical writing are also fundamentally questions about the politics of knowledge. The issue of the provenance of sources, who wrote them where and why, undergirds Vatté's and Boisrontonnerre's suspicions that the majority of European and US writers who wrote about Haiti, because they were from slaving empires, republics, and kingdoms, were inherently biased and prejudiced against the Haitians.
This is one on. I just have to talk into it. Is that got it? So this is our second time doing this kind of event, and it is my absolute joy to be able to be in conversation with Marlene, and kind of in preparation for this go round. We kind of talked about it. We were like, yeah, so like same thing as last time, right? But the problem is that then I, picked up the book and started rereading it. and I had new questions. And this is one of those books that, you know, every time you read it, you're highlighting different parts of it. I have, you know, scribbles in the margins in different color of pen. And I think, you know, 2 years from now, it's going to be a book with like a whole rainbow, and literally every single line is going to be highlighted. So it's a good book.
Thank you.
So to kind of ease into this, though, I want to go back to something you just quoted in the prologue. So you quote Vate saying, "Oh man, whatever the color of your skin, whatever your nation, and whatever your religion you profess, you are interested in the triumph of the Haitians." And so I'm wondering if maybe we can translate this for this kind of idea for modern readers, including students, as we're all preparing our syllabus for the spring. Right, as you said in your introduction, the Haitian Revolution is still a bit of a niche subject. I think less these days, but still is. So why is it essential for people in the US and around the world to learn about the Haitian Revolution, right? Like, why should people today be interested in the triumph of the Haitians?
Thank you for that. And thank you for going on this journey with me, literally and figuratively. So, you know, one of the things that always kind of, you know, one of my, not my greatest irritations, but it's high up there, is when people say to excuse or to sort of mitigate or lessen the impact, which really lessens the people's understanding of slavery. They say, oh, well, they were men of their time. People agreed with slavery. No, the vast majority of the world did not agree with slavery. That's why there was a Haitian Revolution. That's why there were slave revolts and rebellions. And the enslaved population that started rebelling, as I talk about this in chapter 1 of the book, immediately after Spain institutes the slave trade to the island, they begin rebelling. Never agreed with slavery. And as we know, in particular in the Caribbean, enslaved people and in South America vastly outnumbered white European colonists. So the idea that this was just the opinion of the era is incorrect. And there's a lot of new and burgeoning work that's building off of earlier work that is showing that the earliest abolitionists, people who are called abolitionists, but some of it's questionable. There's asterisks there, like Bartolomé de las Casas. They develop their opinions after consulting with the people who are enslaved and colonized, right? And so the first abolitionists in North America, they become abolitionists as a result of viewing the protests of the enslaved people and Native American peoples themselves. And so the idea that, you know, the Western world, for lack of a better term, kind of comes up with the abolition and the philosophies of human rights to destroy the human torture that they created, to me has always been something I want. It's absurd on the one hand, but it's something that I really have kind of dedicated my scholarly life to unpacking and unfolding, and especially in the classroom, to explaining to students why it is incorrect on the one hand to say that that was just the opinions of people in the era, and then on the other hand, how the Haitian Revolution is the culmination of centuries of protests that had already been occurring. And the Haitian revolutionaries very clearly articulated. One of the things I like to talk about is that when I talk about the first revolts and rebellions on the island of Haiti, the Spanish renamed La Española, that it's not me trying to tie those revolts and rebellions to the Haitian Revolution. The Haitian scholars and the revolutionaries did so. They talked about Anacaona, Kaunabo, the Christmas time rebellion. They talked about rebellions in 1697 in the Quartier Morin, just outside of Cap-Haïtien. They were the ones who said, we took inspiration from this centuries-long organization. And when Toussaint Louverture talks about the Blue Mountain Maroons of Jamaica, people say, well, that was completely different. But to him, in his mind, he's the one who makes the connection. The connection is forceful and strong and meaningful, and it is something that can be instructive and that can propel the revolution he is leading forward. And the fact that the Haitian Revolution and Haitian independence opened the age of abolition. It's shameful that it's not more recognized and more well known, because we don't get to the Latin American age of independence in the same way. We don't get to the British abolition of slavery belatedly in the 1830s, but before that, the abolition of the slave trade in the United States and in Great Britain. We don't get to those points without the pressure that the Haitian revolutionaries put on other world governments, because they essentially demonstrate to the world that, oh, you made the US Constitution and there's all these petitions, Benjamin Franklin, others who are saying, let's abolish slavery. And this is used to say, well, you see, the ideas undergirding the US Constitution were good, but the people who were promulgating it were not. And so they fought at every turn to stop the progress of anti-slavery. And what the Haitian Revolution showed the rest of the world was it was possible. It was possible to oppose the slaveholding oligarchy, capitalists as they were, as powerful as they were, with all the lobbies back in the metropole of various countries they had. It was infinitely possible. Human beings chose not to make those decisions. And so that's one of the stronger strains that kind of runs through the earlier sections of the book, thinking about the philosophies that undergird Haitian writing about the revolution.
Indeed, we are all interested in the triumph of the Haitians. So your book is very much shaped by and in conversation with the work of the late Haitian anthropologist Michel Rolph-Trouillot, especially his 1977 Creole history, Tidi Feboulé sous Histoire Haïti, Burning Debates in Haitian History, and his much more famous 1995 book, Silencing the Past, Power and the Production of History. And I'm going to do something right now that is like traumatizing for writers. I'm going to read Marlene's words to her. She forgave me last time I did it. Maybe by the next time it'll be so awkward. But on page 4, you say, this is from the introduction, there are politics involved in the constant evocation of Trouillot as a Marxist rather than a Haitianist, particularly because Trouillot may be the one Haitian scholar that a non-Caribbeanist has ever read. The same uneven power dynamics inherent in the long-standing reading practices that silenced the Haitian Revolution in Western historiography, and which Trouillot deconstructed in Silencing the Past, have also produced Trouillot's greatest influence as Germany's Karl Marx, rather than Haiti's Baron de Vathey, or any other Haitian historian, philosopher, writer, or thinker. In other words, when North Atlantic scholars, who routinely evoke the concept of silencing the past, read and claim Trouillot as a Marxist, tout court, they effectively extricate him from Haitian thought and vice versa. So how did this happen? And kind of how has this shaped your approach to the book?
Yeah, so this is a dynamic where, if you have a syllabus and you're putting, the authors on the syllabus that you want your students to read, and now you have Michel Rolph-Trouillot, who has been happily, Silencing the Past has been the book that all freshmen in college writing programs will read for a year, or that history departments will select for all of their majors to read. But the effect of sort of washing our hands with Haitian, yes, I've read about the Haitian Revolution, and also, as everyone and probably most people in this room who've read the book know, the Silencing the Past is not about the Haitian Revolution, really. I mean, it's not going to give you a history of the Haitian Revolution. It's about it, but it's not about it. It's about how people tried to silence it for several centuries as it was ongoing. It's about the fact that it's missing from most, especially at the time, large works of historiography, that it was possible to write volumes and volumes on the French Revolution without ever mentioning this event, like Ridley Scott did in that Napoleon movie, in which he just skipped over from 1802 and went straight to 1804. How should I feel those years if I don't talk about my campaign in Haiti, right? And so that's that. But the Marxist part of it is that, in effect, saying that Trouillot's amazing, groundbreaking analysis is because of his quote unquote training as a Marxist, rather than the fact that as his brother and uncles and everyone says history sat at their dinner table. If you looked at their bookshelves in their house, they were filled with the works of 19th century and early 20th century Haitian authors. And so it is to, in effect, say his brilliant ideas are actually tied then to Europe and not to the fact of living in Haiti, where you will understand immediately a class analysis. I say in the book that, if you want to think about linguistic politics in Haiti, how there's a high language, that's the French language, there's a linguistic diglossia, the linguists call it, and a quote unquote low language, the one that you only speak at home, you're not supposed to, write in it or use it for government purposes, which is Haitian Creole. You understand that dynamic by stepping one foot in Haiti and listening and paying attention to the way that people interact in different spaces. And so the idea that to develop that analysis, he has to read Marx or CLR James instead of the Haitian writers he grew up reading. He grew up listening to his uncles, his brothers and sisters discussing at the dinner table, debating. Anyone who's ever been to a conference with lots of Haitian scholars who are from Haiti, you hear the debates. People stand up while other people are talking and say, what about, this element? What about this factor? What about this figure? And so really it was to say, of course, Trujillo read Marx, because Marx is an important thinker, but how come we want to imagine that that was the most formative thinker on his life? And I always think back to even, sort of the Marxist, I am not a Marxist, right? If Trujillo, unfortunately, is not with us, what kind of self-designation would he give to himself today? And in this moment to categorize, I think hardly anyone would want to be labeled as a Rousseauian or a Foucauldian or something like that. And yet that language is actually extremely common. So it was really just about thinking about and highlighting the power dynamic when there are certain stock phrases. Like I always tell my students, they'll say Protestant work ethic. I say, what do you mean by that? Right? Because it's something that they just hear and repeat. So if you say Trujillo, the Marxist thinker Trujillo, what do you mean by that? That he had a class analysis, but does that encompass and encapsulate what you're really trying to say in that instance where you're bringing up his work about silencing the past, in which he would not need Marx to understand that dynamic, that these writers like Vathey are not well known, whereas Jules Michelet is regularly touted as the greatest French historian of all time.
So thinking about getting our syllabus together. I see, in a lot of ways, I see your book as complementary to Trujillo, right? Like it's a bit of two sides of the same coin. So if you're going to put Trujillo on the syllabus, now I think you also have to put your book. Like everybody has to, but it's necessary. But which would you have students read first?
Oh, that's a great question because I even make this point in the book about other people who had read a lot of Haitian history. Like Bob Corbett ran one of the largest public conversations in the world for decades. In the 1990s, was running, I've been schooled on this by digital humanities. It was not a listserv. It's an email list because listserv is a company, but an email list starting in like 1991 or 1992. And then they moved to a different email list in the early 2000s. And so some of those earlier messages are lost. But if you were to Google Bob Corbett listserv, you can read about 30,000 of the messages. I mean, you could search through them as well in a rudimentary kind of way because it's older software. But one of the things he says in one of his posts is he says, and this is remember, Michel Trujillo is not the huge figure he is yet. The book has just come out. He says, I just read an amazing book by a Haitian historian. It might be the most interesting book I've ever read about Haiti that is not actually about Haiti. That's exactly what he said, right? And so I think that probably some history of the revolution before reading Silencing the Past makes sense so that some of his greater insights land. And the reason I'll say that is, you know, when you're talking about reading the book a second time and different things jump out at you, every single time I teach Silencing the Past, I notice a phrase that I didn't notice before, I didn't think about the same way before, that seems so utterly profound that I can't believe that I somehow never thought about it in this way. And I wonder if some of that is happening as, you know, we all go through life and accumulate more and more knowledge, especially about an event as complicated and intricate as the Haitian Revolution. Because I will say that writing this book was where I really came to understand certain things, certain moments, certain battles that we talk about, like the Battle of Crête-à-Pierrot or the Battle of Vertières, but what it meant to Haitians and how it changed, how what happened during those battles changed the trajectory and progress of their thinking about the goal of the revolution. That as the French just become more and more genocidal, the independence project begins to affect more and more people and to churn in their minds. There are so many of the Haitian revolutionaries who insisted for so long that they were good French Republicans, that they just wanted the genocidal war to stop, that they just wanted slavery to end forever, that they never wanted to be independent. But there are certain pivotal moments that start to happen that change their thinking entirely, and they realize, oh, we can't move forward this way. One is the arrest of Toussaint Louverture, but then his death, his horrible death in April 1803, left to die of neglect and starvation and dehydration and pneumonia in a French prison. There are just certain things that they start to understand, oh, they say we're Black French Republicans, but actually their real goal is to get rid of us. And in fact, when I was writing the book and reading the letters of Napoleon, which is like, my brain is still not recovered from reading this nonsense, but he has plans the entire time as he's sending them promotions from France to arrest Christophe Dessalines Louverture, whom he succeeds in arresting, Moïse, who's Louverture's nephew. And so I feel that, you know, to understand the Haitian Revolution, it's perhaps not necessary to be so deep into the weeds and to understand Trouillot's argument, but it certainly helps to think about why that history is so suppressed, is because when we really go back and read, for example, Napoleon's writings, you see that this cannot be a hero to anyone. I quote in the book Julien Prévost, who says, "What does it matter to me, you know, if Napoleon has extended his empire, if the French think he's a glorious man? Let me tell you about what he did." And that goes back to your first question. This involves all of humankind, because it's not just because it wasn't done to us or someone who shares our identity, that we can all see that these actions, sending dogs after people, the drownings, these things should not happen to anyone ever. And that is the point of so many of the writers that I'm discussing here. And that's what Trouillot wanted to be more well-known, but first he had to expose the power dynamics, which is why you get that great subtitle. Because I always say the word Haiti is not even in the title, anywhere in the title of the book, you know, and yet it's the most iconic book that most people know about Haiti and the Haitian Revolution.
I feel like it could go either way, assigning yours first or anyway.
Well, I didn't really answer it. I can't.
I feel like we'll have to experiment. So most of the writers who you talk about, those who were critiquing racism, colonialism, and slavery, were still very much surrounded by those institutions, right? Meaning they were the foundations of the rest of the Euro-American governments that surrounded Haiti. Slavery was still legal throughout the Americas as Haitian revolutionaries were fighting for and narrating, as you importantly note, what you call the 1804 principle. So can you tell us, like, what is the 1804 principle, and why was it so important for Haitian authors to themselves explain this ideology to the world, right? And of course, they didn't actually use this phrase because this is one of the great contributions of this book, the phrase, the 1804 principle. But kind of, you know, like, what is it, and why did they need to be the ones to explain it?
Yeah, the 1804 principle is actually very simple. No one should be colonized or enslaved. And they just said, just like that. That's it. And all of their laws, from the Haitian Declaration of Independence, which you see the germs of the laws, to the Constitution that they issue 1 year later, not like 7 or 8. It doesn't take years of debate to come up with laws that would be about human rights. And so there is actually basis for them, I should say, in 1801 in Toussaint Louverture's Constitution, that some of that language gets picked up and repeated in the 1805 Constitution. So we get independence in 1804 and the Constitution about a year and a half later. And the first clauses are going to be about, where is Haiti? Its name is changed. Here's the boundaries of this country, and slavery is abolished. Oh, and we don't want to be an empire. We are going to limit ourselves to this island, and we're not going to colonize other people. And that forms the basis of the 1804 principle, which is that you don't actually have to do those things. Because I think for so long, people like Ed Baptist and before him, Eric Williams in Capitalism and Slavery are exposing how the supporters, the pro-slavery apologists of the era, were really good at their effective propaganda of convincing people that the world was somehow going to fall apart if there was no more slavery. Like, what would we do? There's no other way to organize the world. And so much of early Haiti, because every constitution, Haiti goes through a lot of political upheavals in the early 19th century, like France, like other nascent states that had a revolution recently. And they keep the principles alive: no colonization and no slavery. These are the two principles that remain throughout all the iterations, whether Haiti is an empire under Dessalines, a state, two states simultaneously under Pétion as a republic, and the state of Haiti under Christophe, then a kingdom under Christophe and a republic at the same time, then back to a republic. That principle is reiterated in each of those constitutions: no slavery, no colonization. And it's actually remarkable to think about the fact that slavery's been abolished on the island for 12 years in 1816, which is when Pétion, as president, issues a revision to the Haitian Constitution for the Republic. And they're still saying, we're going to put this in here. Like, we still need to make sure that this principle remains, because they haven't convinced the world yet. They're also trying to keep France from reinvading. And so the fact that those principles, they could show the world that it actually, these are performative. Constitutions are performative. We say no slavery exists, and therefore we make no slavery exist. We say that colonization is outlawed, and therefore we don't go and colonize. The Haitian newspaper says, Dessalines is not a dangerous enemy. He has no desire to go in a little boat and bring little armies and go colonize the other islands of the Caribbean. And so it's very interesting to me, their understanding of just actually how you implement and legislate anti-slavery, anti-racism under Dessalines, and anti-colonialism, and demonstrate to the world that you can be really particular. You get different iterations. Slavery is abolished. There can be no servitude, all in the same laws, just eliminating the possibility of euphemism. And that's what I think is fascinating about these laws, is they're not mincing words at all. They're not like, oh, what's the interpretation? Is that word? No, it says slavery is abolished forever and there can never be slaves here on this land. There's not, servants or other words that sometimes people used in the era to describe the people they were enslaving. It's very, very clear. And I think it's important to recognize the clarity of that language in 1804. And with students, what I do is to show them the US Constitution and the constitutions for the Republic of France, especially when they are reinstating slavery. And they say things like, we're going to go back to the laws that were in place before 1789. So sometimes they will not say outright that that's what they're doing, but that's what the laws before 1789 mean. And I find it fascinating. And of course, we get 3/5 of all other persons in the US context, that these things are not meant to clarify. They're meant to obscure what is actually taking place. And the Haitian case is the opposite.
You talked about like showing the world, and I love the phrasing that you use in the book, that the 1804 principle is an opening, an invitation for the rest of the world to join humanity, which I find is very true. So maybe one more, and then you can wrap us up before we open to the audience. So I want to ask you about what you call the language of the collective. In historical writing, you talk about the use of we by authors like Vathey and Louis Félix Boiron-Tonnerre as they wrote their histories or memoirs of slavery, colonialism, and the revolution, right? Even for events for which they themselves were not present. So could they do this because they had lived through some of the events? Because they knew people who had. You say that Vathey did this, quote, to emphasize the continuity of this history with the present day. So I'm wondering about what this looks like for historians and people writing in the 21st century. What can we learn from this language of the collective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to that idea that this is a history that interests all of humankind. There's a Haitian proverb that says, "Tout moun c'est moun." We are all people. Every person is a person. Over the years, as Haiti has suffered various political and economic and ecological crises and disasters, every so often the phrase "we are all Haitians" will crop up. It's the title of various op-eds or and Facebook note posts, people kind of recirculating this phrase that we are all Haitians. And I think that in a very literal sense for early Haitians, that they had all suffered through something together, which was the revolution that affected them to varying degrees. And this is why in his speech, Dessalines says, just remember, your family members. And his secretary, Boiron-Tonnerre, who, unlike Dessalines, who had been enslaved, was never enslaved, was one of the colony's many free men of color, says, I too lost family members. Baron de Vathey talks very, very clearly about the moment he stopped fighting for France as a free man of color, also from a big, huge family of enslavers, some of the richest enslavers in the colony, had started fighting for the Armée Indigène. And this is what I mean when I say there's certain flashpoints that as I sort of began to learn this story, I came to understand why certain people developed the lines of inquiry that they did. And Vathey says, when Rochambeau, who was General Leclerc's successor, took over as commander-in-chief of the French army, because Leclerc had died of yellow fever, he starts using these dogs that had already been ordered, but to chase down the Haitian revolutionaries. And Vathey says, and then they came for me. The directive was to kill all the people of color who had ever worn an epaulette, who were over the age of 12 was the directive. And he realized, they meant me too, because as a man of color, I'm not considered French. And he says, he apologizes. He says, I can never repay this debt in fighting against my fellow compatriots, and I will spend my life to my last breath defending them. Because, I had wondered when I first encountered his writings, what makes him, he could have gone to France and he could have lived like Alexandre Dumas, whom some people say he's related to, but I've done a bit of genealogical work there, probably not. But he could have, or Victor Séjour, other Black men who lived in France at the time, who came from these wealthy families. He could have done that, and yet he didn't. He stayed to fight. And reading through his multiple writings, I see sort of why he did that. Yeah.
Maybe he would have made it into the Napoleon movie if he had. Not a speaking role, though.
Not in a speaking role. The joke is Alexandre Dumas, père, General Thomas Alexandre Dumas, the real General Dumas père, is in the Napoleon movie. If you've seen it, there's a silent black man walking around without any lines. And that in the credits, I waited to see after who's that supposed to be, because there were only a few people I knew it could be. And that was supposed to be General Thomas Alexandre Dumas, the first Black French general who didn't warrant a speaking part in that movie, I guess.
Awful movie. Do you want to read from prologue or epilogue?
Yes. So just as a preface, of course, I have referenced Haiti's political crises and disasters, and their war against slavery doesn't end in 1804 with independence, but their war against colonialism and racism also doesn't end and ends up being much more longstanding, particularly against imperialism. The United States finally recognized Haiti as a nation in 1862, 1 year after the US Civil War began. All the same, throughout the mid-19th century, the United States had repeatedly encroached on Haitian territory, using gunboat diplomacy to seek territory for naval bases. From 1915 to 1934, the United States staged its full-blown occupation of Haiti. Although US diplomats framed the occupation as a response to the assassination of Haiti's president, Villebrand Guillaume Sam, the fundamental goal was to force Haiti to pay loans and fees associated with the French indemnity, in which American banks had a fiduciary interest. So, of course, France forced Haiti to pay, or to agree to pay 150 million francs as the price of independence. In 1914, the United States impounded $500,000 in gold from Haiti to ensure payments would be made. Haitians naturally protested the presence of US forces. In 1999, the Haitian nationalist Charlemagne Péralte led a rebellion against the occupiers. US soldiers responded with a harsh crackdown, killing Péralte and afterwards circulating a picture of his body positioned in a crucified pose as a warning. During the occupation, more than 15,000 Haitians were killed by US soldiers. Haitians viewed this violent quashing of all protest as a decisive turning point away from the country's revolutionary principles of freedom and independence and toward autocratic rule. In 1929, the Haitian historian and diplomat Dantès Bellegarde complained in a book addressed to President Herbert Hoover that many Haitians now had what he called a general scorn for the law, obeying it only, quote, in order to escape its severe sanctions, decreed and applied by brutal force, end quote. The economist Emily Green Balk, who later received the Nobel Peace Prize, led a delegation to Haiti in 1926. She observed, "The Americans are training not police, but soldiers." She wondered what the effect of such a force would be after US withdrawal. One possible result, she surmised, is self-maintenance of power of whomever has control of this force, subject only to the development of a situation where, like the Praetorian Guard, the soldiers sell themselves to the highest bidder. During the US occupation, US soldiers helped establish the puppet presidency of the pro-US politician Philippe Sudré d'Artigonave. This paved the way for the United States to play a role in installing, deposing, or influencing the election of all subsequent Haitian presidents. The US occupation also ushered in a realist strain in Haitian writing. It made it difficult for Haitians to romanticize their revolution, whose world historical significance US occupiers were making a mockery of. It also provided opportunity to reflect on Haiti's sovereign past with a critical lens, turning his pen to theorizing and historicizing Haiti's lost sovereignty. The Haitian ethnographer Jean-Price Mars wrote, "It is obvious that American intervention in our affairs was bound to bring about a confrontation between two doctrines and effect the substitution of one for the other. On the one side, there was the idea we had of the state. We conceived of it as a very high abstraction, giving to it the attributes of a divinity, omnipotence and omniscience," he explained. "We instinctively felt that one day, eventually, the state would finally and definitively constitute us. Despite all the civil dissensions and political upheaval of the past, All the same, our ultimate hope was that one day the one would arrive and bring to fruition our most chimerical hopes and our most extravagant aspirations, ushering in a new era of adaptation to progress, to modern civilization. But on the other side, one immediate result of the dramatic adventure of 1915 was that it put us face to face with another conception of the state, one that, pushed to its most idealist extremes, consequently restrains and limits the actions of state power to certain conditions and in determined domains, and leaves to the activity of the individual the most complete fulfillment. Different conceptions they were, but both unrealized dreams all the same in a world of imperialism and capitalism. Marx could see the more immediate effective changes the presence of US Marines brought to everyday Haitian life too. On the morning of January 15th, 1917, not long after he returned to occupied Haiti from France, Marx noticed a once familiar landscape had changed in tone. Heavy clouds of a dirty gray were prowling across the sky and over the mountains. There was not a single sound, he wrote. It was the calm of the sepulchre. Suddenly, several bugle calls burst forth, calls such as I have heard at other times, when there were fires in Port-au-Prince, calls for help. Then came the mournful sound of the bells, the tocsin. His sadness overtook him as he realized what those sounds were. Involuntary tears sprang from my eyes, he wrote. A sob rose to my throat, for that was the rhythmic step of the American officers on our ancestral soil. In every society, dog eats dog, Michel Rolf-Trouillot told us. The oppressors merely changed their Christian name. So on the one side in Haiti, as in Guadeloupe, as in Martinique, as in Africa, throughout the entire 20th century, there are those wearing the cloak of the indigenous. And on the other side, there is a different ideological sector, that of the bourgeoisie, which hides its dominance under the cloak of an elite. The US occupation meant the masters or the elite had merely changed their cloaks once more. A statement printed in the Kingdom of Haiti's Gazette Royale provides an apt metaphor for this same changing of the guard that is as true as it was in 1816 when these words were first written, as it was in 1919 when Marx published the work from which I was quoting, as it remained in 1977 when Trouillot circulated Tidifé Poulet sous Histoire Haïti, his first book, and as it is today. Since the dawn of the revolution, the Gazette reads, two distinct parties have formed in Haiti. The Party of France, composed of the white ex-colonists and a few free men of color and anciens libres blacks, dominated by prejudice and governed above all keenly by their own interests. And the Patriotic Party, composed of the majority of the population, blacks and yellows. The latter wanted freedom, the former wanted slavery. Today, the one wants to maintain the independence of the country as the only means of preserving its political and individual existence. The other wants to bring the country back under the domination of France as the only means of reestablishing in time the old order of things by gradually bringing the mass of the population back under the yoke of slavery. From the beginning, there has been a permanent fight between the patriots and the partisans of the French. The latter have always hidden behind the curtains in every phase of the revolution, using every effort, either directly or indirectly, to stop or to hinder the march of the government and the Haitian people toward freedom and independence. We have never been as steeped in history indeed. One thing is clear from examining the long tissue of successive foreign interventions in Haiti and the deliberate destruction of Haiti's sovereignty from many corners and by many actors, both internal and external to the country over many years leading up to the present day. The Haitian Revolution did not fail the world. The world failed the Haitian Revolution. Thank you.
I think we have time for some questions. I think we also have the capacity for folks online to ask questions. So did I see your hand up? No. Yes, I did. Can you, and I know you, but for everybody, can we introduce ourselves before we ask questions? I've been asked to briefly repeat questions for the folks on the Zoom, so I will do my best. Sorry. So the first part of the question, Dr. Ruiz is asking you to situate the Haitian Revolution in the kind of broader field of intellectual history, and then more specifically to talk about where Haitian royalism kind of fits in this narrative. And then also to kind of reflect in terms of your conclusions in conversation with Jean Casimir's book that has recently been translated and also published by UNC Press.
Yeah. UNC Press has a lot of books on Haiti. It's true. And so that is actually kind of part of the answer to the first part of the question, which is, where the Haitian Revolution falls in intellectual history broadly. It's actually, I would love to see some enterprising, student out there, perhaps as a project in this data-driven world. I would actually love to see the markup of where the most books, because we have our anecdotal sense. We say, oh, UNC Press, Duke University Press. There's a few presses at University of Florida Press where we say, these are the ones we know. We're watching their lists. We're seeing what new books on Haiti are being published, University of Chicago sometimes, et cetera. But it would be interesting to see as the field sort of expands. I always say we're in a renaissance of Haitian history because what I'm trying to show is people were writing about the Haitian Revolution always. The silencing that Toyo was talking about in modern intellectual history is actually of more recent date. And in terms of the journals and the societies, I feel like that is slower to catch up to publishing. I sometimes go to the US Intellectual History Society, to the African American History Society, which does a lot on Haiti now. But I find that outside of those two spaces, I don't see that much in, for example, French intellectualist historical circles. I see conferences devoted to the Haitian Revolution, but as a part of broader movements. And then, AHA, MLA, et cetera, the scholarly organizations are also, ASA, the American Studies Association, it's one or two panels, but the real work on Haitian intellectual history is coming out of the Haitian Studies Association, which has been doing this work for, I think, 31 years, Laura? 35 years. 35 years. Laura Wagner tells us, who's on the board of the Haitian Studies Association, is going to hide now. Okay, the question about royalism. So in the last part of the book, I really kind of tackle what is happening in independent Haiti under Dessalines' rule first, with an empire in which the Haitian historians like Vate point out it was kind of an odd title because he was going to be an emperor with no empire, and he has sort of the most developed and forceful law against imperialism that gets translated into the later laws, including for the Kingdom of Haiti, and then how we get to a kingdom from that. And I've written a lot about how a republic wasn't naturally seen by Haiti's politicians and writers as the answer to slavery and colonialism, because the two modern examples they had were the United States and France, and that didn't work out so well in either of those cases. And especially they highlight the case of Napoleon and France and what he does. And they say it's too, even though we sort of have this idea now that because, you have elections, a participation of the people, that it must be a lot harder to overthrow a republic. And so the Haitian writers point out, if you read the Gazette at the time when Napoleon has to abdicate his throne, but then returns for 100 days from the island of Elba, Haitian reporting on this is sort of mind-blowing. They're like, this guy came back with 1,000 soldiers, marched into Paris, the troops he met, put down their arms and let him stomp in. The king fled. Like, what kind of rule is this? And that when he was first consul under the Republic, then he just decided to become an emperor, and everyone just went along with it, not for a few years, for a long time, for about a decade. And so that was a form of instability. And so in the kingdom, they talk about how they wanted stability. And in their minds at the time, the most stable rules were the family dynasties that they saw. And even in the case of the French Revolution, because who gets to go back to the throne once they chase Napoleon away for the final time? The Bourbons, Louis XVIII, then Charles X, which is his brother. Then there's, a hubbub, and the next brothers have to fight, but a cousin who's on the other side gets the throne. So they look at this and see, because Christophe dies in 1820, before any of that happens, Louis XVIII is still in charge, and he gets to assume his brother Louis XVI's throne, who was beheaded, of course, during the French Revolution. So they look at that and say, that is actually much more stable than this idea of republicanism, and that it was still an experiment. And Vatte actually very clearly says this. He says, that might be great for a big country like the United States, where you have lots of people with lots of different opinions, but we're a tiny little country. And they were really wedded in that sense also to Rousseauan principles, where Rousseau actually said, maybe a king could be fine if you had like a few square miles and everyone was in agreement that you would have a few square miles. So they cite these kind of principles and ideas and think about it. It's not just the way that, it's written about a lot. So I appreciate the question, which is, one day they just decided to have a king. Well, no, that's not actually what happened. They deliberated and thought about it and really wanted to find the best form of governance. They were actually very interested in what the most free kind of government would be in the early 19th century. Yeah.
I should have amended your question as I rephrased it to note your forthcoming book with Harvard University Press. Do we have it? What's the title? Well. Oh, okay, never mind. Anyway, keep Jesus Ruiz, forthcoming Revolutionary Royalism with Harvard University Press.
Congratulations.
Then. So the question is, typically in histories of the Age of Revolution, they kind of trend very Protestant. So in your recounting of the intellectual history of the Haitian Revolution, what role does religion play?
Yeah, religion or spirituality, I would say more so, plays a huge role because the story of Bois Caïman, which in the book I call the Morne Rouge Assembly, because historians have done a lot of work, prior historians, I should clarify, separating there are two ceremonies, and one is in a spot called Bois Caïman, and that's closer to when the revolution begins, and the earlier one is in a spot called Morne Rouge, and that is where there's a prayer by a man named Boukman Dutty, and he talks about our God and their God. And I really wanted to consult the writings of scholars who write about Vodou to sort of understand what he meant by that, which is that the God in Vodou is the God of everyone. And so they're separating. The God of the Catholics is the one who wants their enslavement. So it's pretty easy to reject that God. And they say, they quote, for example, the punishment of Vincent Auger, two free men of color, whose were broken on the wheel, which is this horrible, like medieval punishment that the French bring back or, keep using, and then cut off their heads and put them on pikes as a warning to make sure that no other free men of color would ask for equal rights, not even the end of slavery, just equal rights. The punishment says that their heads will sit on those pikes in the roads of their hometown for as long as it pleases God. Right. And so they say this is their God who wants evil and destruction to reign. But our God in Boukman's prayer requires only good works of us. And our God wants us to get ourselves free, and we can band together and we can do it. And Boukman's prayer is a Vodou song to this day. And so that history kind of has stayed alive. And in fact, the text of that speech and prayer comes to us from the writing of a man who I did talk about today, Charles Erard Dumel, from his 1824 book, Voyage to the North of Haiti, is the translation. And he renders it into a poem. But one of the things that's really important in Haitian intellectual history is to always read the footnotes, which are sometimes like another book. And he puts the original Haitian Creole words there in his own French translation. So once in the body is a poem, so people said, oh, it's just a poem. But in the footnote, he clarifies that that's Bouquemont's speech that the oracle sent down and that he's recording and transcribing for future generations.
I want to make sure we have time for you to sign books. Peter, is there any questions from no? Maybe one more from in the room if we have one. We can just get to signing. Well, join me in thanking Marlene for tonight and for this awesome book.
I know I didn't know how to turn it on, so I don't mess anything up.